Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, I've got an S-tier commander for you. Well, I should say S-tier according to my rankings. If you haven't seen that episode on the tiers for the Lord of the Rings set, make sure you check that one out. And yeah, this deck will prove that Tom Bombadil is most definitely an S-tier commander. Let's jump into it. A 5-color God Bard. Tom Bombadil is a 4/4, again for Wooburg, one of each color. As long as there are 4 or more lore counters among sagas you control, Tom Bombadil has hexproof and indestructible. 2 keywords that are incredible at protecting a creature, and, well, in combination, it makes it nearly impossible to deal with. Okay, not nearly impossible. There is still, like a Cyclonic Rift will still bounce it. But still, the vast majority of removal will have absolutely no impact on Tom Bombadil, and it is so easy to get 4 lower counters on your sagas that, well, Tom is probably going to stay in play for a very long time. On top of that, whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control resolves, reveal cards to the top of your library with a saga card. Put that card on the battlefield, the rest of your library in a random order. This ability triggers only once each turn. Now, even with that restriction, this is still incredible because, again, this can trigger on every single turn because, well, there are definitely ways to manipulate the amount of lore counters on our sagas. So basically, hey, with each stripper on the table, we've got the potential of getting 4 free sagas in play and obviously getting their effect when they come into play for their first lore counter. Absolutely incredible. Again, with this kind of a commander, yeah, sagas here, sagas there, sagas everywhere, and yeah, the amount of value you can get, the amount of potential this commander has is absurd. Now, like every single one of my deck techs, at least recently, every single card in them is going to be less than $1, except for, well, Tom Bombadil, which is a $10 card right now. That being said, the total, according to Moxfield, estimated at $31.38. So even with this $10 commander, it's still a very budget-friendly deck with the rest of the deck just being $20 itself. Yeah, Tom accounts for like 1/3 of that price. Regardless, if you are interested in this deck, make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. Now, with all that said, let's jump into those tactics. And of course, first up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble. Pay 2, tap, sacrifice, go get a basic land into play, tapped. Fantastic ramp, especially for a 5-color deck, because it doesn't matter what lands you have in your hand to start, this can ramp you always on turn 2 if you've got it. Moving on, Rampant Growth, the OG ramp card. What ramp is named after? 2 mana, go get a basic into play, tapped. Edge of Autumn base land is the exact same thing as long as you've got 4 or fewer lands. Or later on in the game, this can be crucial in cycling it away by sacrificing a land to get it something else. Next up, poor Steve. I'm sorry, Steve, but we're going to sacrifice you to go basically Rampant Growth. Go get a basic land into play, tapped. Then there's Cultivate. Go get 2 lands. Those are going to go into, well, 1 in your hand, 1 into play, tapped. A great way to set yourself up for your next land drop. Then we've got Grow from the Ashes, a great spell as well. Kicker 2. Go get a basic land into play untapped, or 2 if you kicked it, so you can utilize mana right away. And speaking of utilizing mana right away, Harrow. Sacrifice 1 land, go get 2 basics into play untapped. Entis Restoration is a brand new, awesome card as well. Kind of like Harrow, and better in some circumstances, worse in others. Sacrifice a land, go get 2 basics into play tapped. But if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, hint, hint, wink, wink, your commander's got 4 power. Instead, you go get 3 basic lands into play tapped instead. Next up, Roiling Regrowth. Yeah, we've got a lot of ways to fix our mana. Sack 1 land, go get 2 into play tapped. And then Search for Tomorrow. Another good turn 3 play. Go get a basic into play untapped, or we can spend 2 for a single green mana, so a fantastic turn 1 play. Next up, Springmoon Druid. Basically a Roiling Regrowth on a body, a 1/1 ETBs, sack 1 land, get 2 basics into play tapped. And then finally, Migration Path. Go get 2 basics into play tapped, or we can cycle it away for 2. Yeah, we've got a lot of great ramp effects for this deck because we've got a lot of great things to do with this commander and these sagas. And actually, our sagas can help us ramp in other ways as well. Azusa's Many Journeys has lore counter 1, players will land this turn, 2, gain 3 life, 3, exile it and flip it, and it flips over into a 3/3 that has, when it becomes blocked, untap 3 lands you control. Great. Swing away. Your opponent's block. You benefit. Next up, Jugan defends the Temple. The first lore counter. You get a 1/1 human monk that can tap for a green, so a great mana dork. Second one, get a counter on each of the 2 target creatures. The third one, flip it. And then you've got a 2/2 flyer. And whenever creatures come into play, you can pay mana to get counters on them. And if you've got some modified creatures, this can get quite large. A 7/7 with trample. Next up, Restoration of Aganjo. First lore counter, go get Ace Plains, get it into your hand. Second lore counter, discard a card. If you do, return target permanent card from mana value 2 or less to your to the battlefield tapped. That can be a land, so keep that in mind. And the third one is, well, flip it. Turns into a 3/4 Vigilance. When it attacks or blocks, you get a token. That's nice. And then finally, the Weather Seed Treaty. First lore counter, switch life for a basic land upon the battlefield tap, then shuffle. Second one, a token, a sapling, lovely. Third one, target creature control gets +X/+X, gains trample till turn, X the number of basic lands among lands you control. That can easily be 5. Again, we've got plenty of ways to ramp and plenty of ways to fix with this deck. But now let's move on to tactic number 3. Tell a tale and talk about, well, once we've ramped, once we fix our mana, how to dig down into our deck and utilize cards with our sagas. First up, Contentious Plan, a great card. Draw a card for 2 mana. It also says Proliferate, which means choose any number of permanents and players and give each another counter already there. So essentially, we can pick and choose exactly which sagas we want to get more counters on them. Also, +1/+1 counters on creatures, which I've talked about. We've got a couple ways to do that so far. But still, more importantly, pick and choose which sagas you want to get counters on. And also, yeah, a good way to get that final saga counter on certain ones to trigger them to ensure that our commander is going to get us another free one. Moving on, Experimental Augury. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. One goes in your hand, one goes in the bottom of your library. And also Proliferate. Keep in mind, this is an instant speed spell, so a great way to trigger our commander on an opponent's turn. Then we've got Unnatural Restoration. Sorcery speed, but a great card for this deck. Get a permanent from your graveyard back to your hand and Proliferate. So like a mini regrowth effect, not for any card, just for permanents, but still, we got a lot of fantastic permanents, including our sagas we might want to get back. And of course, proliferating is huge. Then we've got Search for Glory. Go get a snow permanent, a legendary, or a saga, reveal up in your hand, then shuffle. Yeah, we can go get, well, a saga if we really need to, or a legendary card as well. Then we've got Steady Progress. Proliferate, draw a card. Again, instant speed. Proliferation is huge for this kind of a commander. Then we've got the first Arowan Games, a saga that can help us out as well. You get a 1/1 soldier. We get 3 counters on a creature we control. If a creature has power 4 or greater, we draw 2 cards. And then also create a gold token. Again, our commander is hard to deal with, is going to have 4 power at the very least. And yeah, also we're going to be making a token that we can make 4 power as well. Yeah, a lot of value for us with this one card. Next up, Missouri Stalker of Spheres, a 3/3. ETBs, we can pay 3. If we do Proliferate twice, Proliferate, draw a card. So this one can draw us a ton of cards throughout the game, again, with all these Proliferate effects, and we've got a lot of them in this deck. And on top of that, this, of course, can help us Proliferate itself when it ETBs if we pay that mana. Then we've got Showdown of the Scalds, yet another saga that can help us out. Exile the top 4 until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. Basically, impulse draw 4. The second and third lore counters are whenever you cast a spell this turn, you get a counter on each target creature you control. So essentially, again, with this, hey, plays really well with our Proliferate effects, so keep that in mind. Next up, Tezzeret's Gambit. Speaking of proliferating, basically 3 mana and 2 life. Draw 2 cards, then Proliferate. And then there's the Bath Song, a brand new saga. First and second, draw 2 cards, discard a card. So some great card advantage and selection there. The third one is shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard in your library, add blue, blue. So a nice little additional mana from that. And of course, a way to reset our sagas in our library. You know, when we have them go to the graveyard, we can shuffle them back in the library. Our commander can go get them again for us, which can be huge. Then we've got the Elder Dragon War. 4 mana. First lore counter deals 2 damage to each creature and each opponent. Nice. Again, our commander doesn't care if it has 4 power anyways, but also probably going to be indestructible at the time. The second one, discard any of our cards and draw that many cards. A great way to essentially wheel our hand away. And the third one, we get a 4/4 dragon. What's not to love about that? Next up, Vivid Surgeon's Insight. Draw 3, Proliferate for 5 mana. Yeah, pretty fantastic again. All these proliferate effects can be so impactful. Again, keep in mind all the extra value you are getting by being able to just activate your sagas early. So yeah, definitely a great card for this deck. But next up, let's move on to tactic number 4 on repeat. We're going to talk about some cards that can add some extra value for us in different ways. Weaver of Harmony is a great one. 2/2 Snake Druid for 2 mana. Other enchantment creatures get ++1. Yeah, that's nice, but more importantly, pay a green tap, copy target activated or triggered ability you control from an enchantment source. 2 targets for the copy. Again, all of our sagas have triggered abilities, so copy whichever ones you want. The best one that you can get, copy that again for a single mana, a great repeatable effect for us. And when it comes to, well, big effects, the Mirari Conjecture, an incredible one. The first lore counter, return target instant card from your graveyard to your hand. Second, same thing but a sorcery. And the third one, until end of turn, whenever you cast an sorcery spell, copy it. 2 targets for the copy. Yeah, copying all your instant sorceries can be an incredibly powerful thing, especially in combination with all those proliferate effects that you have on instants and sorceries. But now let's move on to tactic number 5, bring it back, because again, we're going to be getting a lot of sagas into play, thanks to, well, our ramp and also to our commander. We get them into play, we get them to the graveyard, and then with the graveyard, we get them right back with Resurgent Belief. Suspend 2 for 1 and a white, so wait 2 turns, and then once you do, return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. We can really time this right, where we can get a lot of sagas into the graveyard, get them all back into play, and get their lore counters going again. Also, speaking of that, Dance of the Manse, an incredible card for a deck like this. Sorcery for X, white, blue. Return up to X target artifact and or non-aura, which our sagas of course are not, enchantment cards, each with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If X is 6 or more, those permanents are 4/4 creatures. So this also going to be a win condition for us. Our sagas can be a massive army now that can take our opponents out on top of all the additional value they get. And when it comes to value, well, again, Arcanum Weaver, this one is a very interesting one for this kind of a deck. 2/3 human wizard. It has pay Mardu, tap, sacrifice an enchantment, return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So again, sacrifice a saga that is kind of on its way out already. Maybe we don't care about its final lore counter ability. Then we say, you know what, let's replace that with something else. Let's go get a better saga back from our graveyard, back into play. A great way to kind of reset sagas and just get a lot of extra value. Now let's move on to tactic number 6 with chapters, and we're going to talk about, well, a lot of ways to proliferate, because we are not done with our proliferate shenanigans just yet. Thirsting Roots is a great one. Go get a basic, put in your hand, then shuffle, or proliferate. So yeah, for a single mana, early on in the game, a great way to fix our mana, or yeah, a great way to just get an absurd amount of value for just 1 mana. Moving on, Contagion class. This is a great repeatable effect. Hey, enters the battlefield, you get a -1/-1 counter on target creature. That's lovely. You can take a creature out quite easily once you start proliferating, and of course, pay 4 tap proliferate. So basically, pay 4 tap, you know, if you've got creatures with counters on them, that's nice. Your opponent's creatures with -1/-1 counters on them, even better. But the best thing, again, more and more lore counters on your sagas that you want lore counters on. So we also have Grateful Apparition. A 1/1 flyer that has, when it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, proliferate. And yeah, this can usually get through on pretty much any player. Speaking of which, Thrumming Bird basically does the exact same thing, but just combat damage to a player. Again, repeatable proliferate effects like this one are huge. Satsuki the Living Lore, another great low to the ground, essentially proliferate effect for us. A 1/3 human druid that has tap and a lore counter on each saga you control, activate only as a sorcery. This is a great way to say, you know what, this is just a repeatable way to get more and more lore counters on, more and more value from your sagas. And when it dies, choose 1, return target saga or enchantment creature you control to its owner's hand, or return target saga card from your graveyard to your hand. Either way can be a great way to reset a saga. And when it comes to resetting things, we can do it all at once with Yorion, Sky Nomad, a 4/5 Bird Serpent for 5. When it enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you own, and return those cards to the battlefield under the control at the beginning of the next end step. Essentially, hey, yeah, let's blink a lot of things, get them all back, and those are going to be our sagas, and we can reset them. So whichever sagas you want to reset, do so, and get a lot of value out of that. So we also have Sudden Disappearance, kind of like the exact same thing, but on a sorcery. Exile all non-land permanents target player controls, return them back to the battlefield at the end of the end step, essentially. So this one is going to be, hey, either a great way to, again, get a ton of additional value out of our sagas, or if we're going to attack an opponent and we're like, you know what, this opponent has a lot of defenses up, but we got a giant army, let's just get rid of all the things temporarily. So do that, swing through, take them out. But now let's move on to tactic number 7, and we're going to be talking about the Golden Pig of this deck, which of course the number 1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig of this deck is Brago, King Eternal. A 2/4 Spirit Noble flying that costs 4 mana and Azorius that says, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. This is repeatable saga reset, essentially. Every single one of our sagas can just stay in play kind of perpetually if we really want to with this, though obviously there are going to be certain sagas that we actually want to tick up, get to their final lore counter, and then go to our graveyard so we can get even more off the top of our library thanks to our commander. So the amount of value we can get out of this is absurd, and again, we can just pick and choose the exact effects that we want to keep repeating and keep repeating them. This plus some proliferate effects can be absolutely crazy. Brago, you are, in my opinion, definitely worthy of the title of the Golden Pig. But now let's move on to tactic number 8, which I'm calling Tales of Terror. And yeah, we've got plenty of ways to deal with our opponent's things as well. Canker Bloom's a great one, 3-2 Phyrexian Fungus, because that's the thing that has to pay 1, sacrifice it, choose 1, destroy a target artifact or enchantment or proliferate. So a great way to deal with a pesky permanent, or again, proliferate, get even more counters on our creatures, and of course our sagas. Next up, Drowned Ichor. Of course, we're not done with proliferating just yet. Target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. Proliferate takes out a medium-sized to small creature, and also again gets a lot of additional value. Then there's Serum Snare. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand if that permanent had mana value 3 or less. Proliferate. So bounce anything essentially, I mean non-land, but bounce basically anything that we need to bounce. It can be something to protect one of our own things, it can be one of our opponent's things, and if it's smaller, yeah, we get to proliferate too. Next up, a Saga that can help us out as well, Binding the Old Gods. First lower counter, restore target non-land permanent opponent controls. Second, go get a forest, put on the battlefield tapped. Third one, creatures gain Death Touch until end of turn. Yeah, giving your creatures Death Touch can be a massive thing and a very game-ending thing in many circumstances. Speaking of ending things, Phyrexian Scriptures. The first lower counter, you get a counter up to 1 target creature. The creature comes in artifactish to other types. That's nice. Second one, destroy non-artifact creatures. Also very nice. And again, our commander, even if we don't get that counter on our commander, is probably just going to survive anyways because it is going to be indestructible the vast majority of the game. The third one, exile cards from opponent's graveyards. This can just be a great hate effect against our opponents that might be utilizing, self-mill strategies, reanimation strategies, etc. Next up, the Phasing of Zhalfir, another great saga. First and second lower counters are the same. Another target non-land permanent phases out. It can't phase in for as long as you control the Phasing of Zhalfir. This can be great. This can be fantastic. This can be a great way to control things. And of course, the third one is destroy all creatures. For each creature destroyed this way, its controller creates a 2/2 black Phyrexian creature token. Yeah, our commander, again, indestructible. Gonna be fine. Our opponent's creatures, most likely not. Speaking of that, Battle of Frost and Fire, great in combination with the Phasing of Zhalfir. The first lower counter deals 4 damage each non-giant creature and each planeswalker. Giants really aren't all that popular, so just wipe out pretty much every medium-sized to small creature out there. Again, our commander is going to be fine. Scry 3 with the second, and the third one is, whenever you cast a spell converted mana cost 5 or greater this turn, draw 2 cards and discard a card. Just some nice additional value there. When it comes to value, though, we also have Birth of the Imperium. The first one, you get a 2/2 white Astartes Warrior creature token with vigilance for each opponent you have. So yeah, basically 6 power across 3 bodies, because we're going to have 3 opponents, right? The second one, each opponent sacrifice a creature. Lovely removal. And the third one, draw 2 cards for each opponent controls fewer creatures than you. So if we have the most creatures, draw 6. Yeah, lovely. Oh goodness, Doom Wake Giant. You do so much work in a deck like this. A 4/6 giant that has, whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn. Again, we're going to be having enchantments enter here, enter there, enter anywhere because, well, we've got a lot of sagas, and those sagas are going to go to the graveyard, they're going to come back from the graveyard, they're going to get off the top of the library, they're going to come into play, our opponent's creatures are going to get wiped out by this. Moving on, Elspeth Conquers Death. The first one, exile target permanent opponent controls, convert mana cost 3 or greater, get rid of something big and nasty. The second one, non-creature spells your opponent's control, costs 2 more to cast till your next turn. This can be detrimental against a lot of decks out there, especially Spellslinger decks. And the third one, bring back a creature or planeswalker from graveyard to the battlefield, get a counter on it or a loyalty counter on it. Again, getting counters on creatures can work great with our proliferate effects. Moving on, the Eldest Reborn. Hey, our creatures getting back are great, but we can also get our opponent's creatures too. And the first one, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. The second one, each opponent discards a card. And the third one, get a creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard on the battlefield under your control. So even our opponent's creatures can help us out. And then finally, Austere Command. Just a great flexible board wipe. Choose 2, draw artifacts, enchantments, big creatures, small creatures. But now let's move on to tactic number 9, stay a while. And yeah, we've got ways to protect our things and get even more value out of them. Flicker of Fate, a great card, instant for 2 mana, blink a creature or an enchantment. And yeah, hey, with that, we can obviously protect our commander if somehow it is going to get taken out by some kind of removal spell. If we don't have Hexproof on it. Or, hey, again, blink and reset a saga. So we also have Teferi's Time Twist, basically the exact same thing for many circumstances in this deck. Basically, blink any permanent we control. Coming back, if it's a creature they counter on it, that is lovely. Next up, Quandrix Command. Choose 2, bounce a creature or planeswalker, counter target artifact or enchantment spell, get 2 counters on a creature, or target player shovels out 3 cards in their graveyard in their library. Again, resetting some of those sagas, getting them out of our graveyard, back into our library. Our commander can get them again. And also, yeah, all these can just be very impactful in different circumstances. Finally, Broker's Confluence. Hey, yeah, this one can just do a ton of work for you. It does cost 5, but it can be huge. Choose 3, you can choose the same mode more than once. Proliferate. Yeah, proliferating 3 times, that can be an absurd amount of value out of our sagas. Target creature phases out, a great way to save something or temporarily get rid of an opponent's threat. And the third one is counter target activate or triggered ability. This can save us in a lot of scenarios as well. So yeah, all great choices. Now let's move on to the final tactic with tack number 10, Tales of Glory, and talk about some real heavy hitters. Machiko's Reign of Truth. The first and second lore counters are target creature gets ++1 until end of turn for each artifact and or enchantment you control. This can be a massive amount. Again, we can just have our commander hitting for an absurd amount, being able to get it through with certain ways as well. I mean, we've got plenty of ways to wipe out opponent's creatures and whatnot, or just, yeah, pump maybe an evasive creature that we have too. The third lore counter is Flip It. Turns into a 0/0 human noble. That is definitely not going to be a 0/0. ++1 for each artifact and enchantment you control. Yeah, that's going to be a massive amount again with all those sagas. Moving on, King Narvi's Betrayal. The first one is each player mills 4. Then you can exile a creature planeswalk card from each graveyard. Second and third, the exact same. Until end of turn, you may cast spells from one card's exile with it. Spend mana as though we're any type. Yeah, steal your opponent's best things and beat them with them. Lovely. Next up, Archon of Sun's Grace. Take advantage Yeah, take advantage of your sagas going here, there, and everywhere. Coming into play a lot. 3/4 Archon with flying and lifelink. Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink. And whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you get a 2/2 Pegasus with flying. So have fun with that giant Pegasus army. Moving on, the Horus Heresy. A 6-mana saga that can be incredibly impactful. Third lore counter is for each opponent, gain control up to 1 target non-legendary creature the player controls as long as the Horus Heresy moves on the battlefield. Yeah, hey, just basically threaten 3 creatures for a couple turns. The second one is draw a card for each creature you control but don't own. Good card advantage there too. The third one is starting with you. Each player chooses a creature, destroy each creature chosen this way. Again, that's fine. Your commander is probably going to be fine because of the lore counters on your sagas. Again, indestructible hexproof, really hard to deal with. And then finally, hey, just destroy your opponent's hopes and dreams with Thought Render Lamia. 5/3 Consolation. It enchantment enters the battlefield under your control. Whenever that happens, each opponent discards a card. Wipe out your opponent's hands. They will never be able to do anything essentially. And yeah, you can even remove their hand on their turn. Even if they just draw their card and then you're like, oh, let's see, I got a proliferate effect in speed. Let's do that. And then, this saga, well, I got to sacrifice because it's got a final lore counter. And then I'll go get another saga off the top of my library. It comes into play, triggers this, discard that card in your hand. Goodbye. Yeah, once it's in play, once you're set up, it is basically going to be impossible for your opponents to do anything unless they've got instant speed interaction that can somehow try to stop you, which again is going to be very difficult because your commander is indestructible and hexproof. Yeah, this commander is crazy. Again, overall, a really exciting, brand new commander that just brings sagas to a brand new, exciting level that, well, shows how potent they can be with the right commander to build around them. And yeah, if you are interested in this S-tier commander, make sure you check out my deck list link in the description below. Again, if you haven't seen the tier episode on the Lord of the Rings main set commanders, make sure you check that one out as well. And with that, this episode is coming to a close, so let me know what your thoughts are on it in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.